without further ado, when we were putting together the themes for the event and talking to people about what's important, it's, as I mentioned there earlier, it's this, how do we get close to the shopper? And that typically is a customer data management type topic. How do we figure out what's going on with Apple's new rules so we can connect on Facebook and things like that. But then people defaulted immediately into like, well, the best way to get closer to the shopper is to get the product closer to the shopper. So that was a little bit of the idea behind today's session. I'm thrilled to have Casey and Pablo here. Pablo, I think it's the first time you've joined us. I know you were going to try to make the New York event, and Casey's been here under a couple different banners, so welcome back. So without further ado, I'm going to let Pablo and Casey introduce themselves. Pablo, why don't you say a quick hello? Tell us a little bit about your experience. You guys have a very unique selling window, and tell us, kind of where you're selling and how you guys are selling around the world.
Sure. Good afternoon, everyone. So I'm Pablo Diaz-Barriga. I'm VP for International for Balls and Brands. We're a direct-to-consumer home decor company focused on holiday. Christmas, which is our most important season, but a few other Thanksgiving, Halloween, and some spring decor assortment. And this is something we tell every vendor, but we're highly seasonal. To give you a sense of the scale for the business, we sell around $300 million. 90% of that happens in 20 days around Black Friday. So we've got to go right from 0 to 100 really, really fast across everything, operations, customer service, marketing, and so on. We have businesses right in the US, which at the moment represents 85% of our revenue, more or less, but also cross-border ship to Canada. We have big presence in the UK, Germany, France, Belgium, Switzerland, and Austria, and also in Australia. This couple of years have been extremely challenging and literally black and white. 2020 went extremely well for us. Home decor demand went through the roof. That had a really big benefit. We had to adapt mostly internally on how we work remotely because we had presence in everyone going to an office. We have offices in Dublin, San Francisco, Boise, Idaho, and the Philippines. So that was the main focus, is adapting internally. But 2020 went really well for us. In contrast, 2021, given our seasonality, was extremely complex because of the supply chain issues that everyone is aware, combined with Brexit. One of the challenges that we faced was around this time last year, realizing that cost was going so high. For us, our most important category are artificial Christmas trees. They come in a box similar to a coffin, It's this big. Weight 50 to 60 pounds each, and most of the cost goes in logistics, both from inbound warehouse and also outbound. So we had a big challenge ahead of us, impacting our profitability. We knew we had 20 days, to go through this and understand how much it's going to cost, how we're going to deal with the extra cost, what are we going to pass to customers and not. So we went through a lot of analysis, a lot of understanding. Want to highlight a couple things where we're critical. That are somewhat simple and obvious in retrospective, but in the heat of the moment and try to solve so many variables, it's hard to pinpoint the most important. Was this analysis of profitability by density and profitability, which are out of our 3,000 products or so, which ones carry the most profitable, and try to identify which ones need to ship to where first, so that we could have them in time for the Christmas season. So that was one, and then two, identifying which out of our markets were the most profitable and switching inventory around as much as we could, and budget. We were lucky enough to be able to move budget around, invest more in Australia, which is the closest to China, and other Asian countries, and thus the cost would go up less relative to the cost of the goods. So investing in the most profitable businesses, and it made up for some of the losses or lack of opportunities in Europe, where the lead times from our manufacturers to our warehouses are a lot more, and the cost was going up by 700, 800, 900% year over year. So that highlights some of what we've been through in the last couple of years.
Yeah, so we'll come back to some of those, but and I'm realizing that I didn't even have Casey's new title up there, but Casey's been with us for a couple of Gelfs, and so yeah, why don't you say hello, walk us through a little bit of your own transformation at the business.
Sure, absolutely. I'm Casey Gee, and I've been with Manscaped for 2 years. Manscaped is a male grooming brand. We're really morphing into a hygiene brand, I guess you could say. I just recently accepted a position as the director of global 3PL management, and prior to that, I came on as director of international business. And so we had gone through an extensive expansion, most of which, or a lot of which, was unfortunately the silver lining fueled by the pandemic. Oddly enough, people were grooming during the pandemic. Some people, and so essentially I came on and we worked on expanding outside of the United States, and that was fueled again because, again unfortunately, but every time there was a lockdown globally, and you could see it happen in different regions, our sales would spike. But that was in an environment too where the supply chain was falling apart, and also there was incredible labor shortages. So as our demand was growing and we were gobbling up marketing because advertising costs were so low, we were just doubling, tripling down. So we were getting in everyone's faces, we were generating sales, and we were having real struggles, keeping in stock and then also maintaining a fulfillment center that was able to sell. So where we ended up was we have a 3PL so we cover the United States. We have 4 3PLs that are servicing here. In Canada, we have a location there, a fulfillment center. In Australia, we have one servicing Australia and New Zealand. In Dubai, we service the GCC. And then in the UK, we have a really good partner, and we service all of Europe still out of the UK, and then we cross-border into Singapore and South Africa.
Got it. So Casey had a great quote. It was more colorful than I'll quote it back to you, but it was basically, I can't sell what I can't source. Pablo, you talked about, was it like a 3-year sourcing cycle for you guys? So being able to, kind of spend on a dime, so to speak, was really challenging. I know we talked a little bit about when you guys are sourcing from Asia primarily. Talk us a little bit through, how some of the supply chain, and supply chain is something that we have not traditionally talked a lot about at Gelf, hence the quote making, it's like, we can't talk about selling internationally if we don't have anything to sell. So tell us, kind of upstream, what were some of the dynamics?
For context, our products are high-end, premium. Everything that we sell is designed by us, right? And as a seasonal, home decor retailer that focuses on Christmas, Halloween stuff, right? Not having a premium, high-quality product means we've got to compete head-to-head with Walmart, right, Home Depot, and the likes as well in international. So everything's designed by us, manufactured by third parties, right, and sold by us. So the whole cycle starts with design, which is a bit more than 2 years before the season. Going through a cycle of design, right back and forth with vendor sampling and so on. And then as we get into manufacturing, it's around 18 months if it's a new product, but if it's a returning a product that is existing on our lineup, it takes 12 months for us from the moment that we place an order to the moment that we sell it, given supply chain and all of the constraints of that come with seasonality. Because there's a lot of vendors requiring a lot of products from same products for a really specific season. So there's a lot of negotiations on, if you give me the item first, if I place the order later and give it to me first, I'm willing to pay more and so on. So it's a really long cycle. We store things regionally, so somewhat similar. We have 10 warehouses in the US. We have 2 in the UK, 1 in the Netherlands. We started the Netherlands when we knew about Brexit, and that was happening, and we knew we had to create some capabilities to service continental Europe and then Australia. We can only serve regionally because of the nature of the business of Christmas, right? Like if you order a Christmas tree for home, you want it for that weekend. because you have plans to decorate on that weekend with your kids or your family or somebody, right, is coming over. And people, right, look for it pretty late. So that has a big impact on our supply chain. Right, it's long. It has to be really well planned. A lot of our inventory has electronics, which incurs in regulations. One of our main challenges for expansion are regulations, and then the scale to be appealing for different traditions. Right, talking about Christmas, right? Like every single country, even within a country, have different traditions of how they decorate, what items, whether it's religious, not religious, if it's a front door, living room, right, or table. So it's also the scale that we struggle with. So consolidating shipments, right, having different vendors, strategically choosing the categories that we have in Australia, have in Europe, or have in the US or North America is something that we look at and consider significant.
Right. I know we also talked a little bit, so yeah, I mean, I'm thinking back to what Rob and NJ were talking about this morning, where she knew that the holiday season was going to start earlier, and of course, I think back to 2020, and you went from pumpkins and Halloween straight to Christmas. It was like Santa Claus just kind of kicked the pumpkin off the front porch, and there he was. And it was really interesting because that impacted you guys, right? I mean, you talk about this small window, but suddenly you had demand kind of coming out of nowhere. And then I think in 2021, you talked a little bit about how that flipped because you, again, didn't have the supply. So have you guys, learned anything from reacting to those kind of abrupt changes in demand patterns?
Yes.
Both of us? Yes. Absolutely. I can tell you that we weren't designed to stock out on our website. We have sizing we sell some apparel as well. We offer the consumer the ability to bundle things so they can create their own DNA, if you will, of something that would become a subscription. So it's incredibly hard from a demand planning standpoint, to figure out how to get a forecast together that's gonna work and you can operate against, and then that'll keep you in stock to allow for that variability. One of the strategies we employed was really, you definitely, obviously, I understand utilizing a forecast, planning against that, but we very quickly have to look at real sales velocity and very quickly decide if we're gonna make a change on maybe splitting a PO or getting something over, doing a strategic air shipment. So we did learn a lot because, again, through the time period that we're talking, the last 2 years, the demand on our product, and again, a site that is not, we kind of have this ethos that we're not going to stock out. We didn't have the ability to stock out. We needed to stay in stock. So I think at one point in time, I don't know how true it was, but I swear I heard like submarines being mentioned or something, to like get product around in unconventional ways. But pivoting based off really looking at what is the sales velocity truly telling you, and then trying to jump on that to make movements that are strategic to stay in stock was a big one for us.
And Pablo, do you think we're back to a normal seasonal pattern for you guys in 2022, or are you guys having to prepare for, some new curveball?
So now we've got into a normal pattern of not knowing what to expect. That's something that we've learned, and some of the silver lining of, right, you've got to be more agile, right? This came up, right? Agile, nimble, react. Some of the nature of our seasonality, a lot of how we optimize marketing, right? We do it minute by minute in our season, right? It's every single change, every single push or pull is critical for us. So that is a strength that we carried over.
Right.
That's important. But similar, right? This couple of years have highlighted some of the opportunities. Like we design our systems for everything to be in stock when the season started, and then pretty much we go through that inventory. And with last year, right, things were still coming in, right, in November, December. There's some items that we left behind, came in, right, January, and then some will come later in the year. So our systems are not designed, right, to meet all of these specific needs. So that's something that we're investing, that, right, just this pressure highlighted, and we've decided to invest in our tech stack in general.
So we need to get some demand planning software people in here, I see.
Yeah.
All right, I'll put that on my to-do list. Casey, you guys are a subscription service. We talked earlier this morning about how the kind of customer journeys were different. I know Elizabeth talked a little bit about how they were kind of borrowing different product lines at Speedo from each other. How do you guys figure out, as you're starting to, open up more and more distribution centers, how does that whole kind of subscription box targeted for, the consumer, maybe on the western side of the UK? I mean, how does that all factor into your fulfillment strategies?
Yeah, it's really complex by giving the consumer, putting them in the driver's seat to really create the I guess, so as they're in that environment, the subscription environment, I'm really biased, but we do a great job of, I think, making a strong push to motivate consumers to then add additional products to their subscriptions, which again, as a subscription, as they're going through that funnel, if you will, they're adding on what would traditionally be a 2-item subscription you would maybe see every 3 months. You now have created on your own maybe one that's 5, and maybe one of those has a cologne, so it's a dangerous good, and maybe there's all these scenarios that then operationally we have to work towards, and then from a supply chain standpoint, we also have some wet products that we manufacture in the Netherlands. In order to be compliant everywhere, you have to sometimes have different baskets to draw from. So there's the idea of that we're now kind of giving the consumer a bit of control of what will be inventory management, and so then we're having to react really, really quickly to that. I think we're served really well by a very intelligent group that is both looking at a cost analysis of what kind of split do we need to make on this shipment if the boat's going to take 3 to 4 months on the water. What are we going to do from an air shipment to again, kind of strategically move products around? And then we also have found that we shift inventory from 3PLs, and it can sound costly, but if you do it in the right way, to shift inventory around strategically, because we know what certain bundles are taking shape or what we're going to be marketing heavily, so we know what those components are.
Right.
And so we can see where there's maybe an inflation of inventory, and that we have the ability to shift it around to different regions. So we're both looking at a strategy from bringing product in from our factories and our third-party manufacturers, but then also what is the inventory we have that we can maybe make some plays with.
Pablo, we talked a little bit about you do some through marketplaces, but that's kind of a different product set in a way. How has that impacted your ability to both source and fulfill?
Yes, we're present at Amazon in the US, and have plans to expand on Amazon in Europe as well, but with a combination of I would say two-pronged approach. One is our high-end brand, it's this debate, where every retailer, you want to be present, you're struggling with Amazon, but you've got to be there. Our customers are there shopping, so everyone have a presence. But also developing a brand that's a value brand, lower ticket items that is more appealing for the segment, or the population shopping in marketplaces. Starting with Amazon, but we're exploring also expansion to other regions through marketplaces first. Latin America, Mercado Libre or Amazon, have taken a first seat approach, and they're investing and growing significantly. So it's become a go-to market for further expansion in certain regions.
So is it all going to go through fulfillment by Amazon, or will there be some kind of hybrid?
So it depends on the region. Amazon has different charges different percentages depending on the category and the country. There's certain countries where we can afford their fees, so it's fulfilled by Amazon, especially if we're starting. It's a lot easier to get started, learn, understand what sells, what doesn't, what is a win, and then eventually start developing the other capabilities. But in existing regions, we prefer to serve fulfilled by the merchant because it's a lot more profitable, and especially in Europe, things are there used to be really great next day shipping or 2-day shipping. It became a lot more challenging this year. But we're seeing marketplaces now as an important go-to-market strategy.
Got it. So we've got about a little under 10 minutes left. We're going to jump into the Brexit conversation. Casey, I'm going to get you to. Casey had some colorful language about that too. Some mention of Interpol as well, if I remember correctly. But I wanted to pause just in case there are any questions or anything like that? Obviously, we'll try to do a little bit at the end, but why don't we talk a little bit about Brexit? It was weird when we were doing the program, as I mentioned earlier today, a lot of times, one of the top 3 questions is, China. What about China? And there was probably more discussion about Europe. In fact, Jim and I sometimes struggle to kind of wedge Europe into the conversation. Not a problem this year, largely because of not just Brexit, but some of the other VAT and other kind of cross-border restrictions, between UK and EU. What's going on with Brexit with you guys, and how's that kind of making you guys kind of reinvent your global logistics?
Yeah, it's been really interesting. The word interesting might not apply. It's been challenging, but it's been rewarding. We've developed some interesting strategies. So we're lucky enough to have a partner, 3PL partner in the UK. Seco actually is our partner, and we work with that team and kind of a fiscal solutions group that, as Brexit was approaching, there was a lot of unknowns around it and what the true result was going to be. And so we decided on a strategy of let's keep this inventory here because we really wanted to keep it consolidated as best as we could. And we ended up developing a strategy. I should also say that the way we fulfill is we fulfill DDP to 99% of where we're shipping. And so what ended up happening is those DDP options basically just dried up. And so we worked with Seco and internally with our tax specialists, and we came up with a method where we actually still do it today, is we receive, so out of that facility in the UK, again, we're selling to all of Europe and then cross-bordering into Singapore and South Africa. And so what we're doing for Europe is we're receiving orders in, we're transiting those and into Belgium, where we trigger an ET 14,000 license that allows us to defer import pay tax. So that's a cash flow positive there. And then we accept the goods under a registration that we have in Europe, and then they transit back out into carrier flow that gets them to the end user. So it's a bit costly, and we're now looking at strategies because of the growth of our European sales at working with Seco and potentially a location out of the Netherlands. And so we're working at strategies to solve, but it's worked out really well thus far. There is a cost associated with it, but the Interpol part is when I start talking about it, I feel like someone's going to come after us because it's a little convoluted. But it allowed us again to deliver the customer experience that is what we had really staked our flag on. Was it's still a relatively quick shipping time and it's a DDP service, and so we were able to maintain that consistency. So it was challenging, but we got through it.
We'll make sure the film guys, put a box over your face and disguise your voice.
Yeah.
What about Brexit for you guys? Was it another kind of painful lesson with some benefits at the end?
Yes, it was a painful lesson. Out of all of the inventory that we're shipping right from different parts in the world, mostly from Asia, the longest road is to Europe. Mm-hmm. Within the orders, the last ones to come were the UK, which is our largest market, just because of transit and getting things into a container, how much demand there was, the cost, and So that provided a big challenge for us. I mentioned that we have 2 warehouses in the UK and 1 in the Netherlands, which we developed because Brexit was coming and the continental European business has been growing for us. So we had that warehouse, but we didn't know what to expect, Okay, we're now going to start shipping, servicing the UK from continental Europe, getting goods in. So we've developed metrics that we didn't track before, and that's improvement, that's improving our fundamentals on how we track and what we ask our partners to track to understand how our goods are flowing in and out. But we face a lot of challenges because we didn't have the inventory in the UK and had to ship a lot of orders early on. And we also come from a shared inventory, which reduces risk incredibly well. You can serve and then tweak marketing or do a lot of things. And now we're developing a model that is a lot more constrained, where we're trying to serve as much as we can right, the UK from the UK and continental Europe from our warehouse in the Netherlands, and finding other levers that we can pull in case we need them. One of them, which has also been a silver lining on the pandemic, and it's very relevant when inflation coming, is understanding price elasticity of different markets and different segments within a market and different categories. So we've identified, by increasing prices, because we had to, which pieces of our assortment can afford and will be fine, or can get a little bit more, and which ones can't. So if we've adapted our demand, our marketing, our value proposition towards and testing a lot more messaging so that we can deal with rising costs and the inflation that's coming.
Can you share any of those new metrics that have kind of emerged as you're kind of tweaking it?
Sure. One is just duties, right? Like in the past, it would be just 100% things come in, right? It's like, oh, that's a given. And now we've got to track it to make sure, okay, what is the success rate? So far, it seems somewhat random, right? Out of the pallets that we carry, like it isn't, we haven't found any patterns, but some things get just stuck in customs. And for us, if it gets stuck a week, that's half of the season gone.
Got it.
So developing those at a daily basis and just have more information to react. And also cancellations. Cancellations have a huge impact for us, right? If the product is delayed slightly more.
Right, it's not Christmas anymore.
Yeah, not Christmas, I don't want it, take it back. So we're incurring double cost of shipping because we've got to take it back. So we're tracking, it's hard to track cancellations because they're after the fact. So also all of the tools like marketing is assuming you have revenue. And you keep optimizing and spending more, but at the end you don't. So we're trying to find what variables are tied to cancellations, right? So customer service calls, the type of emails, the tone. So we're using some AI to understand the tone of the emails, so we can predict cancellations a bit better, and then be able to react.
Got it. All right, we're almost out of time. Well, thank you, guys. I know we wanted to tackle social questions, but I kind of kept you hemmed into the logistics box today, so thank you for your patience on that. But how about a quick round of applause for my speakers here?